Heroes of Might and Magic is a game series well renowned for its turn-based, fantasy-themed conflicts, where distinct factions with unique heroes attempt to make their mark and expand their influence through their vast armies and mighty magics. And like most series that have lived to be as old as Heroes, there is a wealth of design knowledge to be learned from this franchise. Its time and resource models, its takes on player skills and proficiencies, and of course its replayability come to mind. But those are going to have to be topics for another video, because today on Game Design Foundry, we're actually going to be taking a look at how the Heroes of Might and Magic series has used satisfying sound and visual effects to create what many, myself included, consider to be the best ultimate feel-good casual game of all time. There is no better area to start our analysis than the music, the background tracks that lay the foundation for this series, from scenario selection to the individual themes of different towns and factions, to the overworld map that a player will spend endless hours in. You often hear that dynamic music tracks that react and shift to a player's actions offer peak immersion, but in Heroes of Might and Magic, it's actually many static tracks across different sections of gameplay that culminate together to achieve that immersion. When you play a game like this, you're playing it usually for a long time. A campaign can run you days, weeks, months. Hell, I've been in a few that have lasted years. And these tracks, although static and predetermined, come together to form a symphony of sorts, a series of relaxing, hyper-specific tones and melodies that all share a very similar pitch and quality to one another. Now, nothing close to being as complex as Red Dead Redemption's layered audio tracks, or as active as The Legend of Zelda's dynamic combat scores. But despite their predetermined and static nature, they accomplish something very akin to the dynamic tracks of both the games that we just mentioned, Immersion. Heroes of Might and Magic is a game of a different caliber. It doesn't have the intense thrill of robbing a train in Red Dead, or the jarring action of being in a boss fight in Breath of the Wild. No, Heroes puts its players on an overworld map, one that is mostly, apart from a few animated objects, completely static. The actions the player takes are of a tactical nature, and often gameplay revolves around just a few clicks of the mouse. When you watch gameplay of this overworld map as I talk over it without any of the game's audio or visual effects, it looks, I'll be honest, dull. But watch how a process as mundane as a few clicks of the mouse has life breathed into it from its ambient tracks and musical cues. But of course, you probably noticed the music cannot achieve this feat alone, and the sound and visual effects that accompany these tracks are no slouches either. But the sound effect of collecting a resource, learning a skill, or even just moving your hero around the map. The visual effects of landing a creature's attack, of a spell taking hold over the enemy, or even just watching the moving pieces of your cityscapes. The designers of Heroes of Might and Magic recognize that its gameplay is fixed, in the sense that there aren't a lot of moving pieces to draw the eyes of their player and give them good feedback. Now, if you've worked on UI design at all in your career, this will be familiar to you. User interface like Heroes tends to remain static. Whether it's a menu or an inventory screen, there usually is not a lot of action going on, and that is core to their purpose. Often systems that use a UI require the game to be paused more often than not. But UI designers recognize that despite these things needing to serve that purpose, that does not mean they shouldn't be stimulating or give players feedback in the same ways regular gameplay would. But of course, they get a lot less freedom to achieve this goal than, say, a level designer would, and so they can only attempt to accomplish it in a few key areas. Look at this menu. As you navigate it, the subtle sound effects, the slight visual outbursts are everything. The entire task is lifted from movie title screen to gameplay, with a few well-timed effects that the player has full control over. And when you look at Heroes of Might and Magic, while there are all these tactical elements, choices to be made, and role-playing opportunities, if you let it just sit and look at it, it plays out like a user interface, just waiting for the player to click on the buttons or briefly unpause it for a combat encounter. And because of that, every single mouse click is rewarding and feels important because the sound and visual feedback are designed with the intention of satisfying players, of making it feel important. The responses an otherwise static game world gives me are stimulating. I want to pick up the next chest and hear the sound effect and visual cues that result. I want to start my next turn because it feels good to hear the orchestra that plays when I do. It isn't dynamic, not in the least. I know the sound effects I'll hear. I know the visual effects I'll see, but I want to experience them again and again. Because while the clicks do different things, everything feels good to click on. The time and effort that went into making simple actions invigorating are glaringly obvious. So what you have in Heroes of Might and Magic's design is a casual, hyper-accessible, play-at-your-own-pace game where every action, no matter how small, is responsive and feels alive. Because like UI, it can only present gameplay feedback to players in a few ways. And when you play this game, and when you start making those clicks for yourself, you can see that every single musical track, sound, and visual effect that comes as a result of your actions does just that, and succeeds at making you want to click again. Player feedback. I hope you all enjoyed this week's video on the sound and visual design of Heroes of Might and Magic. I've been playing this series again these last few months and was heavily inspired to do some content on this. What would you like to see next from the things I talked about earlier in this franchise? It's time and resource models, it's take on player skills and proficiencies, it's replayability, or maybe something else entirely? I'd love to hear what you guys want to see. I want to take a quick moment and say happy Thanksgiving to my viewers in the United States. You guys are the largest chunk of my subscriber base, and I really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy Thanksgiving weekends to share it with the channel. And of course, a thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. You guys inspire me each and every day to create, and create I shall continue to do. Until next time, my friends, keep designing, never lose your passion, and I will see you all in the next Game Design Talk. Bye, guys.